Storybook Brawl 6.8.9. It's that time again. They made some changes to Storybook Brawl. They say that Royals rise, Dwarves fall, and a fair few new characters have entered the scene. I'll note, one of the things that I thought was a little bit problematic by the end of the previous season was that a lot of games felt, especially in Mythic, a lot of games felt like they were decided, the top 4 slots even, being decided based around treasure interactions that you either got on 3 or you got 4 or 5 for the specific kind of support sleigh build. So here I'm talking about the idea of getting Hat Ball relatively early on, or going for Bad Moon and then moving into the Horn of Olympus for the support the entire front row, as well as the ability to double the supports from your back line, mimic that possibly as well, ending up with situations where you end up with a giant Jormungand build. You've got Lightning Dragons that are supported double times by the entire back line, or triple times by the entire back line if you have a Mick. There were a lot of builds that felt like if you didn't roll for them, you would be knocked out by the top 4 players who rolled for them and did hit them. So that's what I wanted to see possibly addressed. Let's see how it went. Dwarves. Dwarves have been at the top of the heap for a while now, so they've decided to take more action. Here they actually mentioned that they have cut Bossy out of the game. They cut Bossy out earlier in a hotfix. So for a very long period of time, I just thought that I was extremely unlucky and could not find Bossy for the life of me because there was no patch notes talking about it. But here they actually mentioned they have cut Bossy. They've also cut the Dwarven Forge. I think this is an appropriate change. Dwarven Forge was such a huge inflection point for Dwarves, as well as something that you didn't even need to keep for that long a period of time. It was just too huge a spike. Completely fine. Very glad that was changed. Tweedledee was moved from rank 4 to rank 5, kind of replacing the power gap that Bossy was leaving there, but creating a pretty huge new power gap in the 4 for the Dwarves, where an 8 health unit arriving in level 4 is not super competitive without some already really good support behind it. This has probably had more of an impact than cutting Bossy, the change to Tweedledee. In fact, I can say definitely that it has, because in between the hotfix that removed Bossy, there obviously Dwarven Forge was still in the game at the time, but that was never the giant thing, because obviously you had to hit it very specifically. It was never consistent in every single one of the Dwarves builds that would beat you up. But Tweedledee was in every one of them. Good stat bump though. They've changed Sky Castle. This, I don't understand for one reason, and it's not the mechanical implementation of it. I totally understand that. Why did they change the art? It already looked like a Sky Castle. They made it less that. Why? It's now original art. Really? I would have assumed that this would have been some of the placeholder art that they bought in the asset packs. But yeah, Sky Castle was never a particularly huge effect that you were happy to hit. Like, if you're Mirian, you know you're going to be playing them, sure. Here you at least have a position where there are a lot of prince and princesses on 4. Riverwish Mermaid in particular is on 4. Both of those in the back line for the sleigh support for the front line. There's Juliet, 2 Juliets giving you your upgraded Juliet. But more importantly than that is... I forgot the name of the thing I'm thinking about. Prince Arthur? Prince Arthur. Okay, yes, Prince Arthur, who, if upgraded, or rather even unupgraded, says I give upgraded royals +2/+2 per round. If themselves upgraded, gives upgraded royals +4/+4 a round, only needing 2 to upgrade them, and then being able to burst from there. Maybe Arthur becomes competitive again, especially if you only need 2 Arthurs to actually get a gilded one on board, maybe. it can start to parallel the stat growth that some other builds can do at that point. One of the big problems with Royals I've often found is that at the point that Royals will start scaling, after you get your gilded Prince Arthurs and things like this, every other build scales faster than it now. Like, the point at which it starts getting good, it starts getting worse than everything else. The trajectory was just weird. Maybe this will help address that a little bit. I will say the majority of my use cases so far, with my experience in this patch so far, with Sky Castle, have been for doubling Riverwish Mermaids, and then I almost always immediately drop the Sky Castle. That might just be me, to be fair. Some actually really interesting changes here to some 2-cost relics. Your characters have +1 attack changed to your evil characters have +1/+1, and Fountain of Youth, your characters have 1 health. Your good characters have +1/+1, giving you a little bit more incentive to actually move in a kind of synergistic direction of doing evil or doing good. Those stat buffs are very significant early on, especially in resummon builds. So having, specifically having a Lil Bo Peep or Princess Peep, I've just forgotten the names of all of the cards that aren't in front of me right now. Having a Princess Peep, instead of being a 1/2 that explodes into 3 1/2s, having a 2/2 that explodes into 3 2/2s is a gigantic increase in impact on the board. Now, characters. Oni King has been moved down in cost. I think one of the big reasons that Oni King previously wasn't able to make this move is because there was the Pumpkin, the Great Evil Pumpkin, being able to resummon units that were 6 cost into 5 costs onto the board, right? And especially when Pumpkin, a patch ago, was a 5-cost unit, that probably wouldn't have been okay. It probably would have made it too reliable that an evil resummon build hits impactful minions, because 5 costs become 4 costs, suddenly you have access to Medusa, just invalidate an enemy minion. 6 costs become 5 costs, you've got Rotten Apple Tree in there. Also adding on top of that, Oni King for all of the other whiffs that you usually have, being monsters that then attack for +7/+7 or +10/+10 if they had have kept the stat line that way, would have been too much. I do like, especially here, the fact that a build that has not really been able to find its own direction, that's taken maybe a monster book on 4, maybe a friendly spirit on 4, maybe it's got Grimsoul still trying to do some slay triggers for a Chupacabra. I like that these kind of almost directionless monster builds find a place with Oni King on 5. Still not entirely sure if it keeps you alive for more than a round or 2, but we'll explore that. Gingerbread Night, a new level 4 prince. Also worth noting, particularly good with the Sky Castle, meaning that on 4, as you are on pace to get that treasure, there are also a bunch more prince and princesses diluting the pool. Gingerbread Knight is a recovery tool, is a 7/7 by default, and has +7/+7 if you have 20 or less health at the time. Honestly, in a world where sometimes I would take a Juliet on pace just to get a 7/7 on the board, a 7/7 that if I'm doing badly is a 14/14, makes a lot of sense. I really like this as a recovery tool where you have failed to find a direction and you just need a stat brick. Speaking of stat bricks, Burning Tree. I'm really happy to see a new Treant in the game. Let me be very clear about this. The fact that Treant's support through treasures is very minimal. There's no Tree of Life anymore. There's no Book of Wild Growth anymore. The fact that the support for them is very... the most important one, Round Table's been moved to 7, so it's not reliably gettable in any game. They've been languishing for a while since that has occurred. Burning Tree has significant impacts. It really does. I've seen, top 3s, top 2s have Treant builds relatively consistently, which means they are able to go toe-to-toe with the other builds that I've been talking about previously. Your Hat Ball, your Slay over control, things like that. Another one of the reasons that I really like it as a tool that can suppress the slay build, that is to say the Lightning Dragon slaying instantaneously a member in your backline with its bonus attack at the start, and getting enough slays on the triggers there that it buffs a Jormungand to be absolutely ridiculous. This is a natural suppressor for that kind of build, because there's a natural inclusion of Soltak Ancient that protects your backline, prevents that early slay, gives you an ability possibly to then respond to their Jormungand. You've also got stat invalidating minions in your Rotten Apple tree that you naturally include into this build. Big fan. Big fan. The Burning Tree is a 5-cost evil treant that has the base stat line of 520, and bonuses to my attack also add to my health. So this works exactly the same as the double bonuses from doubly or triple bonuses from triply. If it's a permanent bonus to its attack, it'll be a permanent bonus to its health. If it's an in-game bonus to its attack, it'll be an in-game bonus to its health. It just takes the equivalent that occurs on one of them and then transfers it across. Or, you know, in Doubly's case, would do it again. Treants died a little on the vine since the a little once Shoulder Fairy stopped working. Of course, sorry I didn't even mention that part. Shoulder Fairy is no longer working with Echo Wood because they aren't start of round buffs anymore. They just immediately have the stats. They wanted to plant some new seeds. Burning Tree is a massive threat if you can buff it, and works perfectly with Ashwood Elm. That is the thing you immediately want to draw attention to here. So Ashwood Elm is the 0/20 evil treant that costs 6, that says at the beginning of the brawl, give my health in attack to all treants. So it gives 20 attack to the Burning Tree, which also gives the Burning Tree 20 health. If you've got gilded versions of those treants, suddenly you're working with multiplicatives on top of that. It's good. Time Flies. A level 5 animal. It's a 3/3. When one of your characters dies, summon me from your hand. Time flies when you're winning brawls, and this definitely gives you a little extra punch. There are plenty of combos to be found with this one as well, and we will leave those for you to discover. I don't know if I haven't discovered them yet, or if this card is just fine. There's the obvious things that you would think of. You know, get a Berenstain in the back line, you know, double or triple the stats of the Time Flies that comes into board. Well, yeah, but is that better than a bear? Is it, you know, it's more animals to hit on pace there that are effectively a resummon, but does this fix the problem with that at all? I'm not entirely certain. Something that they may have been considering a combo with it, though, here is the Feasting Dragon. A little bit more dragon support in the game. Well, not dragon support, just another dragon. A 5-cost 12/8 has Slay. For the rest of the game, characters in your shop have +1/+1. Dragon is hungry, and given a few feasts, can buff your upcoming characters nicely. People have been asking for more dragons, so here we are, even if it's eaten a bit too much to fly like some other dragons. So immediately at this point, when I see Feasting Dragon here, I immediately think, oh, they're gonna change the Slay and support relics. Right? And now it's time to see the hero changes. The two things that I led into this talking about, the dominance of builds that find or have to fish for specific treasures on 3, creating a really unfortunate play pattern where if you want to be able to overcome the people doing that, you have to do it faster than them. There have been just too many games where I have been knocked out at, 6th, for example, and everyone above me has had something insane really early on. That is something that I thought would deeply need addressing, and isn't at all. I think one of the big reasons that is a relatively consistent play pattern, obviously, it's very powerful and it's a way to actually fight against the other builds that are doing the same thing. But the thing that most disturbs me about it is that there are very few fails, if you find Bad Moon, you can start to work with that. If you find Crystal Ball, you can start to work with that. If you find Merlin's Hat, you can start to work with that. If you find Treasure Map, go up from there. You can start to work with that depending on who you are. I think the problem with Spell Ball at the moment is literally just that it has a lot of cost reduction available to it. There's a cost reduction for spells on 3, that's Merlin's Hat, reduce spells cost by 2. There's 1 on 4 in the Moonsong Horn. There's 5 giving you Mimic for any of the other ones that you might already have, as well as Aeon for slaying the reduction of costs for spells. It's too easy not to hit and still do Spell Ball. And the support treasures for the Slay build are really, really, really dominant. It's rough. I would have liked to see those addressed a little bit. I don't know if Horn of Olympus can exist as a 4. It's very good. It might be too good, in my opinion. it's because it's now 1.5 rotations that I've seen it in. And the absolute dominance of it in Hat Ball is a bit much, in my opinion. Moving on to the hero balances, though, they've taken a lot of the heroes that you would otherwise never pick and changed them into actually particularly interesting heroes. So Pan's Shadow here is no longer the first evil character you buy. Each round costs 1 less, and is instead, when you reach level 4, level 2 and 3 characters no longer appear in the shop, so you just have the Staff of Old Toad as soon as you hit level 4. And it has much more thematic resonance, being Pan's Shadow. Peter Pants can't progress beyond level 3. Pan's Shadow can no longer gain level 2s and 3s after they reach level 4. It's good. I like it. I want to play a lot more games with it. I don't get offered it as much as I would like. One I get offered a lot more is Fates. Instead of having upgraded characters having +5/+5, it has your upgraded characters have +3/+3, and the first character you buy is destined to upgrade. The text doesn't make it extremely clear, so destined to upgrade means that every store from then on until that character is upgraded will auto-include a copy of that character. That is after the generation of the store, right? So it's not replacing a minion in your next store, it's adding an additional minion. I've seen so many eggs recently. People buy eggs now. People play the eggs. And not badly either. Ivella, your evil characters have +1 attack for each of your animals that died this brawl. Now changes to your evil characters have +1 attack, and they have an additional +1 attack for each of your animals that died this brawl. I don't know if +1 attack across the board is what Ivella needed. I think it might have been, you know, a better competition against enemies when animal resummon builds are online. That would have just been my assumption. I haven't seen Ivella represented significantly since this change. So I tend to argue maybe that was the case. Ivella has bounced around a bit, and this iteration gives her a little more power to start with. She's a great hero for evil comps, but evil comps aren't really a thing right now. That's I think the thing that I most take away from this. I was really hoping... Don't get me wrong, I love a lot of the things in here. The Oni King change, the Gingerbread Night, the Burning Tree. Huge additions to the game. Each things that I think will really, really benefit it. The Sky Castle change, all behind that as well. Both the Dancing Swords and the Fountain of Youth change, all behind them. I was hoping that this patch would help address the dominance of treasure-defined metas. And I don't think it has done that as much, at least as of yet. So let's explore how you play in a treasure-defined meta.